Thank you, Bangalore International Center. I feel overwhelmed by the affection, warmth, friendship extended to me, and I feel absolutely thrilled and honored to be the first speaker of this year, 2022, at this venue. Let me wish all of you a happy year ahead of you. I said, I feel humbled, overwhelmed, grateful, but I'm not sure if that my consciousness, is some kind of fiction or it is reality. As philosophers admit, reality. I also do not know if all the phenomenal world surrounding me is there or whether I imagine it being there. Caught between these two great philosophical uncertainties, I have, as they say in Hindi, tinke ka sahara. I have one certainty, and that certainty is that the bridge between one's consciousness and the phenomenal world, the world of phenomena, the bridge between these two is there. And that bridge for human beings, for Homo sapiens, is language. We name things, the universe comes into existence. Without those names, the universe is a gray, diffuse spectrum of non-identified, non-experience. Language specifies, concretizes, provides locations, provides an address in the stream of time and in the expanse of space to everything. Things are things because the words are there. In other words, the world is there because the word is there, without any exaggeration. With this caveat, I go one step further. Our civilization, great civilization, probably it's a set of civilizations. Probably it is yet fully unborn civilization. A Russian astronaut has defined civilization as human existence in an interplanetary framework. So according to that definition of development and civilization, we yet have to enter civilization. But I am not getting to that definition tonight. I will arrive there in the fourth lecture. But our great civilization has a unique character in comparison to what has been the Egyptian civilization, the Mesopotamian, the European, think of any. And that peculiar quality of our civilization is ours is a linguistic civilization. What has the most commanded Indian mind in the past or even in the present? It is the word. And I'm not thinking of the pharaohs of Egyptians who had the ability to interpret God's word and therefore punish those who were found deaf to God's word. But I'm thinking of the creative genius of this entire civilization. I do not think the boundaries which have come and gone have mattered to India. Our maps have changed so often. So our civilization cannot be mapped with maps. Powers have come and gone. Kings have come, disappeared. But those who exercise words, the poets, the speakers, the thinkers, they commanded our memory. what keeps all Indians together is not a piece of land or a single religion or single ethnicity, but the ability to remain amidst many languages without feeling uncomfortable. Travel in a London bus or a tube and notice the expression on the face of an English British when she or he hears language and words in another language. Think of a Delhi or a Calcutta or a Bangalore bus rider or train rider and imagine the expression on one's face when one hears different languages. There is a vast difference. We are primarily a linguistic civilization. This is my second caveat. Now, within the framework of this, language being a bridge between the consciousness and the phenomenal reality, and language being the foundation of the civilization, and I'm not thinking of a language, but language with L capital, languages. With these two caveats, let me take one step forward in what I want to put across to you this evening. When did humans start speaking? That question has been answered variously. The most liberal answer is that 70,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens moved out of Africa, started moving out of Africa, the Homo sapiens that genetics calls modern man. For genetics, human genetics, that is modern man. 70,000 years ago, humans moved out of Africa and spread over all continents. The numbers were not large, but the numbers were significant. Significant enough to make a speech community. Those humans had the gift of language, that is, exchange of signs, which are capable of becoming semantic symbols. These Homo sapiens are known to have arrived in the subcontinent, South Asia, at least 65,000 years before our time. All the ancient skeletons assess by, with help of genetics, tell us that story. All the stone tools that are lying around everywhere tell that story. But I'll not get into that story now. I'll do that maybe in the third lecture. But even going by a rather stringent assessment, we have been speaking in this subcontinent languages, numerous languages, at least from the time of the Holocene. Now, Holocene is a way of assessing the environmental age, and that is dated at maybe 9,600 years before Christ. That's roughly 11,000 years before our time, or 12,000 years before our time. Let me use the number 12 rather than 11, me being rather superstitious about 11. 12,000 years Indians have spoken. And because they had spread out, somewhere in Andaman, somewhere in South India, somewhere in the Shivalik Hills, and they had formed what linguists and anthropologists call population knots, a speech community. A population knot is a number of humans, more than roughly 800 or so, who can stick together to perform all functions necessary for their survival, and therefore they continue to stay there. These population knots were the nurseries for different languages. Because when humans are spread out, and some live in Himalayan foothills and others live in Nilgiris, they're bound to speak different languages. For 12,000 years, India has had many languages. Was there a mother language for all languages in the world? The Bible will propose that. Even the Brihad Aranyak, the first of the Upanishads, will propose that. But that proposition is more out of respect for the divine rather than consideration for the languages. Therefore, we need not take it as being true for language, though we can take it, if we want, as being true for the existence or non-existence of the divine. Languages have not been like they have not been like amoeba springing out of one and becoming many. Languages have been many from the beginning of Holocene. That is a new environmental age when the temperature started rising well enough to allow us to survive, to have plenty of plants and animal for us to prosper and multiply our numbers. We have now come to the end of that era, and I am told by scientists now, we entered what they call the Anthropocene. History of 12,000 years of this civilization, created by numerous languages, is a glorious page in the history of evolution of life. Life which might have, given that the Big Bang, so many crores of billions of years ago, and the solar system and the Earth, life at least for 250 to 300 crores of years. In that, a glorious page we have written. Now, why is it such a glorious page? What is the big deal with having so many languages? The glory is in this, that the structure of the human brain is different from the structure of other animals, in that it is a recursive brain, that it can think, it can relate to the rest of the world, but it can also think about thinking. And language helps that animal to articulate the thought about thought. That's the beauty of human brain, and therefore the bridge that the human brain has with the rest of the world, human language. It's a great creation. It's a great advent in the process of evolution, making up so many languages. And we continued doing that for thousands of years. There are Prakruts before the arrival of Sanskrit. Sanskrit seems to have arrived maybe 3,400 years ago, 3.5 millennia ago. There is debate about that, but I'll set aside the debate for now, because that is not what I'm discussing. But prior to that, when people arrived in India from Iran, from Turkey, from Syria, from Central Asia, the steppes, they arrived from all over, brought agriculture. Now you all know that the terms for agriculture in Kannada are not of Sanskrit derivation. The terms for agriculture in most Indian languages are not of that derivation. Terms for our weapons come from Persian. Terms for our prayers in most cases come from Sanskrit. Terms for our business come in most cases from English. We gathered from all over. We have been linguistically tolerant. We have been linguistically hospitable. And our great virtue of what we call tolerance in this is because of our attitude to language, multilingualism. For hundreds of years, for thousands of years, we nurtured Prakruts. Please think of this. The Vedas are dated approximately 1400 years before Christ, Rigveda. And the last of the Vedas, last of those four Vedas, roughly 800 years before Christ. And then comes the era of the Aranyaks, Upanishads, Shastras, and so on. Despite the potential debates about these dates, maybe a few centuries, a few decades, aage piche, I accept all that. That is not the matter that I am pointing to. But think of Gautam Buddha. We know he existed. We know that he taught what he had to preach using a set of languages that we call Pali. We know that Gautam Buddha was proposing philosophical concepts. And for a language to bring in highly philosophical concepts, a language needs to be in existence at least for half a millennium years, at least for 500, 400, 300 years. Kannada today is a sophisticated language because Kannada has 2500 years history behind it, or 2000 years history behind it. We know that Mahavir, who belonged to the 6th century before Christ, had his teaching in Prakrut. And in such a Prakrut that when his followers 200 years after his demise moved to the west, could actually use the same Prakrut and continue the textual tradition of Jainism. Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka. Pali and Prakrut would have existed prior to the arrival of Mahavir Jain and Gautam Buddha, respectively. And if you think further south, we know Sangam poetry, we know Tolkapiyam. I mean, that's the Christ would have read Tolkapiyam, probably. It is pre-Christian. But Tolkapiyam, the Tamil text, ancient Tamil text, talks of space in terms of, I'm using Sanskritized names, Aham and Puram. The inner space and the outer space. And this is a tremendously philosophically loaded concept. Tamil, used by Tolkappiyar, was not a fresh baby. It was not a newborn language. It was not as if Tamil came up and the very next year, very next century, a Tolkappiyam could be composed. A Proto-Tamil would go back probably by a millennium or so, and there are theories which are not fully accepted, but propose half-received theories about some combination of some linkage between the Indus civilization, Harappan civilization, and ancient Tamil. The point I want to place before you for your consideration is, if Tamil in the south and its dialects, many dialects, because Tolkappiyam actually speaks about at least 5 major dialects of Tamil with clearest words. Tamil with its dialects, Pali with its numerous dialects, Prakruts with its numerous varieties existed when Sanskrit had arrived in India. That is, if we were to go back to 2nd millennium before Christ, India has numerous languages which have become mature for agriculture, for nomadic life, for pastoralism, and for poetry and philosophy. It is not for nothing that the Upanishads were written in a dialogic format. What is an Upanishad? An Upanishad is a dialogue, which later, accessible to us, we see in the Gita, which is a version of the Upanishads. And so many of the lines from the Vedas are picked up in Upanishads, cast into a dialogic form, and that's what we see. A dialogue is not a dialogue in literature, is not possible for a primitive society. Friends, I am saying that we had advanced languages of many kinds, and Indians were at great comfort in having many languages. So Shankaracharya, Adi Shankara, goes all the way from Kerala to the Himalayas, and he is not cowed down by the presence of some ancient Kumauni or Gadwali variety. He is comfortable. A Matanga who wrote Brihaddeshi, who laid the foundation for music, Srungardev and Matanga are the founders of music in India. Matanga wrote Brihaddeshi. Brihaddeshi is musical qualities of all languages. He did a documentation. Brihaddeshi. Brihat is all, compendium of all the desis. And he's talking of musical attributes of a language, which is a highly sophisticated linguistic analysis. In such a country where we nurtured languages, we evolved languages, we accepted languages, we adopted them, we developed our creative expression in those languages, we have today come to a situation where we are digging up a graveyard for languages. In other words, if our civilization is a linguistic civilization, we are bringing our civilization to a point of extinction. Sharp words, harsh words. But I must articulate these words tonight before you. The Greeks came here, and a Greek man marries an Indian woman. Their child becomes one of the greatest playwrights of our country of all time. Mruchakatikam, written by a man whose name includes the word for horse brought by the Greeks, Ashwa Ghosha. A Kalidasa accepts a Latinate convention when his Dushyanta gives a ring, not a Mangala Sutra, ring to his Shakuntala. We accepted Yavanika, Parasika, what we call Barbarica, but not Barbarica of the Latin sense of barbarian languages, but African languages. We continued this merry making of that. We've been making this, merry with so many languages. Our merry making with so many languages continues till English arrived here. And that was quite a comical moment in our history. The British landed in Surat, and their Captain Cook, or whatever his name is, the first leader of the East India Company. In Surat, even today, people cannot speak English. Very little English they know. I mean, 400, 500 years ago, in the year 1600, 500 years ago, they did not have any English. Captain Cook hired a Portuguese to translate what he was speaking in English. The Portuguese man also knew Armenian. So from English to Portuguese, then from Portuguese to Armenian. The Armenians knew Persian, and from Persian to Gujarati. You know why the East India Company took 17 years for getting the license for trade in this country? Not because the ease of doing business was not known to them. There was no unease in doing business in those times. So one did not have to create ease of business. But because of this linguistic difficulty, and yet, though there was none in this country who understood English, in 200 years' time, Indians were ready to write in English, speak in English, and Rajaram Mohan Rai went all the way to London to tell the lords in the Lord's house to give English education to us, not because he was a Deshadrohi, but because he loved his civilization, which loves languages. Please think of this. Portuguese, when they were in Goa, we know. But let me share this with you. When I was doing this survey, linguistic survey, I came across in Maharashtra a set of small villages where the education level is probably high school. The best is high school. The worst is no school. And those people speak Portuguese. They today do not know that the language they speak is Portuguese. But they speak Portuguese. And this has become a great favorite subject for linguists to study. How come completely illiterate villagers in India speak Portuguese? When I was doing this survey, I came across in Ahmedabad a family which claimed to me in no uncertain words that their mother tongue was Japanese. Citizens, Indian. I said, show your Aadhaar card. 4 children and parents have Aadhaar cards. The mother tongue is Japanese. In the survey I was doing, I found 160 languages spoken in other countries. In Asia, I'm not talking of French and German and English, but a language like Karen from what was Burma, Myanmar. I would think that Karen, I would think it's natural if Karen is spoken in Mizoram, which is done. But I found Karen language being spoken in Andaman. There are Karen speakers in Port Blair. When they migrated, maybe they migrated together with Subhash Bose's Indian National Army. One doesn't know. You think of yourself and your family and extended family and just count the number of languages that the extended family speaks. My wife speaks Kannada. My parents spoke Gujarati. I speak Marathi. We all speak Hindi. We speak some English. When I started working with Adivasis, I got to speak about 12 of their languages. 15, 16 languages. No deal. Vishwanath, a 14th century poet, wrote a poem after Asaf Khan died. Asaf Khan was a great satrap of the representing the empire, Mughal Empire. Vishwanath wrote this poem in 16 languages. Single poem has 16 languages. Asaf Vilas, that is the title of the. After printing came to India, a beginning of our road to the graveyard of languages was made. Languages that got printing in them prospered. Great literature was created in those languages. And I'm happy, I'm glad that it happened. But printing came to India and was spread sporadically. The first government printing press was in Calcutta, St. Fort William. Laluji Lal was the officer appointed by the East India Company. He created printing in 6 languages. Bangla was obviously there. But one of the 6 languages he decided to call Hindi. And there was no Hindi at that time. He was to print textbooks for the young ICS of Indian civil servants who came to India at the age of 23, 24 from SOAS, London. They came here and started working. And for their benefit, he was creating simple textbooks. He printed a Hindi book. Prior to that, the languages that we today know as Hindi were either Bhojpuri or Khadi Boli or, so many different varieties. By the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, about 12 languages were in print. Some use the identical script, others use variety of scripts. Languages change their scripts, and script is not a language. The English does not still have its own script. It is using Roman script, but I consider English to be a good language. I love it. Even if she does not have a script, I love it. And Khasi has had a script in the past. But Khasi was disrobed of its script by a curse. Let me share this story to you quickly and then move forward. When the Khasis migrated to the Khasi Hills in ancient past, and that would be about 1800 to 2000 years ago, their language had a script. But the script was the robe which they wore. And they had to cross a river. God had given them that script with the condition. These conditions are attached to any deal. The condition was you will never make this robe wet. The Khasis had to cross the river there, and so they were undressed and they had held high all those clothes, that is their scripts. But some water drops got sprinkled, and then their script disappeared. This is a beautiful story about the. So Khasi had script first, then came Khasi language. That is, there are many languages like that. We have amazing variety of these languages. I can go on telling you for 8 days continuously till Bangalore International Center actually decides to shoot me. We have a sign language in India. And it's not the sign language which deaf and dumb, people who cannot speak and cannot hear use. We have 8 such languages. We have 8 of those sign languages in the country. And I had done documentation of all of those. But we have another sign language which is used by the Gondolese. Now these Gondolese have a script which is written in thin air with no surface at all. One Gondolese stands at one point and says, "You whisper in my ears any sentence in any language." Not the language that he knows, but it could be a language not known to him. So once I was with these Gondolese, and Rumila Thapar was there with us, and she said, "I don't believe what you tell. This is a pure bluff. There must be some trick." So I said, "No, let's speak a French sentence in the ears of this man." And there's another man at a distance where the man cannot hear what is spoken. But this man does, some movement of hands, and the other man reads that movements of hands. So, and speaks out the sentence, whether it's French, German, Kannada, Malayalam, whatever language in the world. So this is transliteration of every sound by writing in air. I thought this was the ultimate. But this is not the ultimate. Where I worked with the Adivasis, there is a painting tradition. And that painting, it is done on a very large wall. Nearly, probably Vinod Raj has seen that in Tejgarh. Or 15 to 20 feet in length and about 10 feet in height. 200 square feet. In that, they write their entire history through pictures. And these are not pictographs. These are not hieroglyphs. This is a narrative of a different order altogether. I will not drag you into that. That is at the moment the ultimate. But we have people who write in paintings, people who write in symbols, people who write without symbols or any visuals, all kinds of. These many languages got orphaned after printing came to India, and when India decided to organize the states in 1955, the idea of reorganization of reorganization of states, a commission was appointed. A beginning was made in 1920s when in the Congress a resolution was passed to have as many languages as possible protected by a free India's constitution. In the Constituent Assembly 1946 to 1949, a lot of debate took place as to which language is to be national language, and all of them, wise men and women, came to the conclusion that India shall not have a national language because India is in essence a multilingual nation. And that's why I said India is a language civilization, not a nation civilization, not a people civilization, not a purpose civilization. It's a language civilization. In the 8th schedule of the Constitution, and why a list is made, and why is it in the schedule of the Constitution? The answer is very simple. All the debates in the Constituent Assembly that came to a conclusion became articles of the Constitution. All those debates which remained unfinished got into the schedules of the Constitution. For instance, the powers of governor in tribal area, no resolution, put him in 5th schedule. What happens to autonomous law of the northeastern states, put that in the 6th schedule. What happens to the language issue in India, put that in the 8th schedule. 14 languages were put in the 8th schedule. All of them were available in print. That was made the minimum qualification for getting into the 8th schedule. At that time, in 1950, when the constitution was, 1949 November, we the people give to ourselves this Constitution of India, hereby adopt and not. What was the language population? What number of languages existed in India? Prior to 1949, some 60 years ago, an Irishman had started a count. His name was George Abraham Grierson. From 1896 to 1928, he did his job of counting all the languages. And he had come up with 189 languages and 544 dialects, what he called dialects. But his definition of dialects was rather, permit me to use the word weird. It was strange. Because he put Kumauni and Gadwali as dialects of Hindi. He put Tulu as a dialect of Kannada. He put Kutchi as dialect of Gujarati. He put Ahirani as dialect of Marathi. So everything that was slightly removed from print became a dialect for him. Or a language had to have enough number. Yet he had made this count, and going by his count, there were hundreds of languages and dialects. And yet the 8th schedule had 14. Today the 8th schedule has 22 languages. And then I go to what Ravi said. In 1961 census, the list of mother tongues, 1652. In 1971 census, this list was brought down to only 109. But 108 were names of languages, and 109th was a very strange thing. All the 108, 10 years after 1961, the next census, they read as names of languages. 109th read all others. I was a young man. I was in my 20s when I saw these statistics. And it really triggered my imagination. I said, all others, wonderful. Ye to Alibaba 40 chore, I must find out where are those 40 chores. I must go after them. Where have they gone? All others. Suddenly their names have been dropped. So I started looking at the map of India. On the map of India, I noticed that most of them could be located geographically in the central belt or among the nomadic people. For instance, Hakki-Pikki speak, we know this here. Hakki-Pikki people speak a language of their own, but it's not there in the 1971 census. It pained me. It pained me that hundreds of languages are being concealed. And so I started an exercise with the help of a team of 3,000. We worked, and we really worked. We really worked. I am very proud of this country that I could find hard-working, honest 3,000 persons who worked without expecting a rupee in return for the love of languages. And I am convinced that India is a linguistic civilization because of that. And we identified 780 languages. The census has changed its style. In the last census, they have given a list of 1,381 or 82 mother tongues again. But 1961, the census has 1,652. In 2011 census has 1,380. Do a subtraction and see how 250 of 240 languages died in the last 60 years. They're dead. Which are these languages dying? Nihali in Buldhana district in Maharashtra is spoken in 3 talukas. Nihali has a history of at least 30,000 years. It is the kind of language that people, some of you might have been to Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh. The people who painted those caves spoke Nihali is the kind of language that those people spoke, because Nihali has no linguist in the world has been able to identify Nihali as part of any existing family of languages. Neither Indo-Aryan, not Tibeto-Burman, not Dravidic, not Austric languages. It's an isolate, non-classifiable, because it is old. And Nihali is not the only such language in the country. There are other languages with histories of 8,000 years, 5,000 years, 3,000 years, 500 years, whatever, but they are our languages. We have been digging up a graveyard for these languages, because the estimate of UNESCO and estimate of my team that has assessed how far languages will survive, the assessment and the estimate tell us that at least 70% of the languages that are there will go in the next 30 years. The remaining 30% will be there, may get some official patronage. But even in those languages, mighty languages, such as Kannada, Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, there is an erosion of words and the semantic load that the words carried in the past. And this is not happening only to Kannada and Tamil and Telugu. It is happening to English as well. Today, world over, more people speak English, but they speak less English than people spoke maybe 100 or 80 years ago. All of us know, there are quaint words. The other day, a friend of mine wanted to create a truth army, activist group. I said, why don't you use the word truth instead of truth? Because truth is exact opposite of troll. My friend said, but truth is not an English word. Probably it's a German word. English words appear like foreign words to English speakers. Kannada, I was speaking about Kshitija to a group of youngsters. And they said, sir, what is Kshitija? I said, damn it. I did not say damn it. But I was really shocked. I said, horizon, Kshitij. They did not know that word. Think of names of stars, names of trees. You have lovely gardens in your houses. But please, for my sake, tomorrow morning, try and name every plant in the garden. You will be at a loss. Birds, trees, animals, stars, months, spaces, colors, we're losing words. In Marathi, there used to be a color called English color. English color. My parents would not allow me to buy clothes of English color. They said white shirt, khaki half, enough. Kirmizi is a name of a color. In names of fish, in Gujarat, coastal area, at least 350 names of fish in traditionally Kharwa language. Gujarati does not have those words. In any case, Gujaratis specialize in imposing vegetarian diet on everybody. But that's not the fault of fish. We are losing our world because we are losing our word. When a language dies, a worldview dies. When a language dies, a way of measuring space and time disappears. When a language dies, the lineage and the heritage of long-standing of a community disappears. When a language dies, particularly with the nomadic people and tribals, their identity dies. When a language dies, the unique strength of our civilization gets eroded, curtailed to that extent. We are surrounded by language death on all sides at this juncture. And the solution is not to be militant about languages. Militancy does not help any language in the world. Only love helps language. Only dialogue helps language. Only compassion helps language. and only humility helps language to remain alive. Silence is all is the last sentence of a famous English play. The rest is silence. Silence is all. Silence probably will protect our languages. But silence, not in social, silence in the digital space will protect us. The digital world, the digit, is today reducing language to nothing. In a house, you will notice three persons looking at their mobiles and not talking to each other. In the digital world, sound is made absent and aphasia is imposed on sound-based language in the cyberspace. In that cyberspace, we may progress and become homodious. We may progress and might become a combine of artificial memory and human memory. But in that space, the language that made us humans will be constantly reduced, diminished, it shall disappear, and a day will come when our future generations or species will turn back and say, hey, this is that animal called Homo sapien that use a thing called language. I wish we could speak or hear that language outside digits in real human space. When a language dies, the entire civilization dies. Thank you.
Good evening. That was a wonderful lecture. I just want to compare our neighbors, China, who in the last 100 years probably has killed off most of the languages because they have only one language. Do you think then that civilization will just die? Because right now they seem to be prospering. Your views?
That is so with Argentina. That is happening to South America in a big way. Today, out of about 8 billion, one-fourth of the population is in South Asia. If we add China to that, we go close to almost 40% or 45% of human population. China has blocked other scripts and other languages. And it has been aggressive towards territories that use other languages. Bhoti, Tibetan, is an example. That is true. But the material success of China is no justification for blocking of languages, because think of from where China has come and where it is today. After 1948, when the Long March and Mao coming to power, China has opened up today. It is probably going to be in the coming times world's leading capitalistic country. And all capitalism, out of greed, is telling us that business grows if diversity is there. I will not be surprised if China establishes schools of languages in all universities to learn languages from all over the world. China chose that path from 1948 till about 2008, but has taken a new turn. When language shrinks in China, please also think of the shrinkage of knowledge in China. What new theories have come out of China? Chinese have been very good at collecting, documenting, storing. They are translated from our languages quite a lot. I went to Beijing and saw that there is an academy which has translated the entire Mahabharata from Sanskrit to Chinese. But in the past, that tradition was healthier. There was a man called Kumar Jiva, who probably was Chinese. He came to India and took 800 Indian books for translation to Chinese. He did that. And that's what kept Buddhism alive. If a country blocks a language for a while, that does not mean that its material success is a proof of the fact that having fewer languages is a necessity for material success. So let's look at China in a long shot, and probably our conclusions would be different.
Do you think that transliterating different languages into the scripts that is available would help them to live longer?
Yes, uh, because transliterated oral languages will force the primary education system to admit these languages in the arena of primary education. However, I have a rather strange observation to share with you. Schools and universities do not help languages survive. A language survives if there is livelihood in a language. If there is no livelihood available in a specific language, people speaking that language tend to migrate to another linguistic zone. So the survival of a language does not depend on whether it is written or not written. In any case, in human history, languages came into writing just about 6,000 years ago. Writing became prevalent generally just about 2,500 years ago. I mean, until Ashoka decided to write on those rocks, we don't have writing known, though there is reference to writing, but we do not have writing as commonly known. Sanskrit survived for a very long time in oral form. So did Tamil. So did Tamil. And Kannada certainly. We have writing, we have rock inscriptions, they were very expensive. Till paper became available in the world, in South Asia, which was in the 13th century. Generally speaking, paper, there were Turkish merchants in Delhi who used to sell paper. They became extremely prosperous, more prosperous than the people who have sold petrol to this country last few years. Then writing became common, and even then, after the 13th century, say Tukaram, his gatha was sunk into Indrayani river. Still, his poems survived. How? Because they were sung orally. And there is, and this is Tukaram is a 17th century man. But we go to the 19th century. Ghalib, he became very poor, and he was hoping for some bakshish from the, he was waiting for some award, patronage from the government. So between Calcutta and Banaras, Delhi and Banaras, the old world had faded, the new had not still dawned in terms of the academies of literature, patronage of literature. So Ghalib did not have his manuscripts with him, and on Banaras Ghat he heard a beggar singing one of his poems. How? Not writing, oral. The oral can be brought into the educational arena if it is written, but the oral can be brought into the next century if those who are oral are given jobs, livelihood support. That is important. A language is created for survival of humans. Languages survive if humans survive. That is. And when I said Indian languages are dying, the government is neglecting languages, what I should have said more explicitly is do a development map of India and see where there is less development, economic or material development, and better development. And you will notice in all the areas where people speak some languages other than the state languages, the development part is lagging. We need to micro plan our economic development in such a way that language becomes a parameter. It is factored in the development plans. And yesterday the budget has come, but I don't think there is anything for languages which may disappear. It's not just the language; those people are fading out. Those people are getting pauperized. They're getting mixed. In Bihar, 18 of tribal languages were so badly neglected. Most of the tribals from Bihar are today domestic servants in Delhi and extremely badly kept. They're kept as slaves, almost like human trafficking. Language, survival, livelihood is a spectrum, just as language, writing, knowledge is another spectrum. If a language is good on both these spectrums, a language has a much better chance of survival. Thank you. I do not rule out one or the other.
Hello. I must thank you for the information you gave us right now. And I have a question. If capitalism is causing the death,
What is the name?
Sumed, if capitalism is causing the death of languages as people speaking diverse languages aren't given jobs, what alternative economic model would support languages and sustain industrial or economic growth?
Capitalism has caused languages a big damage. I'll tell you the factors that have caused damage to Indian languages. First is the caste, because caste made certain languages, speaking some languages or using some languages, a taboo for a large majority of Indians. Second is capitalism. The third and the deadliest is the cyberspace. In the first two, languages were there, but their use was restricted. In capitalistic societies, one tends to encourage the use of the English language. I mean, the language where the capital support is the greatest. Or it could be Hindi, or it could be Spanish or French, some chosen language. But the cyberspace is depriving us of language because of a scientific reason, and that reason is our language is sound based. The digits travel long distance. They can travel, these signals, electromagnetic signals. These digits can travel across planets. And when you get across planets, sound-based language has no chance. That new space, the digital space, the interplanetary existence, the dream of landing on the Mars, or creating Jupiter as our colony, just as the British and the French and the Portuguese wanted to make Asia and Africa their colonies. Today, many people in humanity, among humans, want to make those other planets their colonies. Those crazy, non-sustainable drives will destroy human languages extremely rapidly. We have experienced Corona last few years. There are 7,000 living languages according to UNESCO count. These languages are dropping dead as if an epidemic has struck them. Before my eyes, I've seen so many languages die. In Andaman, of course, the story is known to you. The last Bo speaker was 85-year-old. Her language was nearly 60,000-year-old. She was speaking to birds only during the last days because there was nobody else. I went to Sikkim. There is a language called Mazi that was being spoken by 4 persons when I went there. Today, not any of those 4 alive. That language is gone. I can tell you, please believe me when I say this, when I sit for my breakfast or dinner, like Othello, is it? No, or is it? Or is it Macbeth? to say Amen, and I could not say Amen. The word stuck in my throat. I hear words sometimes as I am traveling, and I fear that that could be the last time I hear those words. If you sit quietly for half an hour and think of how many words of your childhood you lost, you yourself will be really shattered. You'll feel shattered. So many, I mean, this must be experienced with everybody. So many of the things that your grandmother, grandfather, parents have said are just not in circulation anymore as words. Those meanings have gone. Cyberspace is pushing us into a new reality. 3 years back or 4 years back, the Nobel Prize in Physics was given not for a person who studied matter, but a person who studied non-matter, negative matter. Humans are trying to figure out an existence which is free from matter, in which time won't exist, because in interplanetary space, human time means nothing. It is nonsense. So humans want to be free from the bonds of time. They want to live a deathless life. They do not want to do any labor. They want to control all the energy in the world for their use so that they can be gods. This is a rebellion, a treachery against the process of evolution. And our languages are paying a price, heavy price, because we have all been treacherous to laws of nature. This is my view. It may not be acceptable to everybody, but because I love language, I am expressing my love for language in these words. The situation is no longer normal. Like in 19th century, there was debate, should there be English or Bangla? We don't have that space left. Should there be only Kannada or English in Bangalore? We have no space left for that. Our disaster level has gone way beyond. And we will have to do some, just as the world has declared an ecological emergency, the world should declare this 21st February a linguistic emergency in the world. In Europe, out of 78 languages they had 15 years back, 16 are declared digitally dead, official. A language dies if it is not in digits. And in that sense, out of these 850 languages that I have encountered, more than 700 languages are already digitally dead. As in an ICU, a body is kept on ventilator, those languages are somehow there technically, but not linguistically. And that's a sad thing for me. I feel pained.
Thank you for your talk and for your time. A little more on the topic of development. Sorry if this is repetitive, but I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on, from the Bible actually, Genesis 11, about the Tower of Babel. It talks about how humans got together and started building this tower that was reaching so high that it was reaching the heavens, and God got threatened by these human beings. So God plotted to go down and confuse the language, create more languages so that humans are confused and they're not invincible. So, and that's like the story of how human beings spread out across the world and spoke different languages and were hence not invincible. I was just wondering if you could share your thoughts on that.
Thank you for alluding to the Tower of Babel story. In that story, and the Bible is a great text. I just adore it. So much poetry, it's moving. the way the life of Jesus is described, it leaves me completely cleansed. It makes me new every time I read the account of his last days. But in my story, language came first and then came God. Think of it. Other animals do not have a concept of God. Only humans have. Had the other animals got their own concept of God, they would have fought like us as we do between Muslims and Hindus, Christians and Hindus, Hindus and Buddhists, Buddhists and Jains. Animals, other animals don't. We created a notion of God because we had language. And we created that notion of God because we had language, because language allows us to name space and name time. And we wanted to name space that is unlimited and time that is unlimited. And therefore, we wanted to imagine a beginning before the beginning which is completely limitless, the original, and space which has no limits at all, and therefore the other world. And in that world, we posited a notion of God. I respect gods because they are created by humans. I love them. I admire them. I salute them. And they protect me because I have faith in their ability to protect me. If my faith is not there, they won't be able to protect me. Just as we think that the police will protect us. Just because we think they will protect us, we think they're protecting us. Otherwise, you know what they're doing. The Tower of Babel story comes from the concept of a center, of a single origin. And consistent with that idea of a single origin, a single maker, we have then everything made by the single power, whether it's man or woman, cows or buffaloes, trees or birds, language or another language. It's one way of looking at our genesis. But there could be other ways. I mean, I work with tribal communities, Adivasis, and they have fantastic stories of origin. Really, absolutely shattering stories of origin. All kinds of stories. It is their way of looking at the origins. I'm worried about I feel concerned with the Indian way of looking at origins. And the Indian, and I'll speak about this in my last lecture, about the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is such a wonderful poem because it tells us again and again that India does not have a single origin. The day Indians accept that we have a single origin, like Canadians do, that Marco, or some people say Marco Polo came here or Columbus came here, that was the beginning. Or the day Indians start believing that this civilization has a single origin, Indian civilization won't remain what it has been. I'm talking about the good things in their civilization. I'm not talking about torture of women, torture of Dalits, torture of scheduled caste, torture of... I'm not talking... The good things. That civilization has some good things and plenty of them. India has many beginnings. For instance, for some of us, Indian history begins with Ashoka or Buddha. For others, it might begin with Harappa. For yet others, it might begin with agriculture. For people like Dhangars or Vanagujars or Bharwads in Gujarat, it begins with the nomadic, that is 11,000 years before our time. Because India has, and we accept these many beginnings all at one and the same time. That's what makes us very different from, and I'm not boasting about it, I'm only describing this. It makes us different from Latinate civilizations, Egyptian civilization, and the Mesopotamian civilization. Probably the closest to this is the Armenian, from which we drew our Rig Veda. Many Buddhists who admired Gautam Buddha for his wisdom, and he was a wise man, unparalleled wisdom. And yet his followers who loved him so much decided to create the Jataka story so that Buddha has many beginnings. And the Jains did not lag behind. Jains created the story of Tirthankaras with many beginnings of Mahavir. This idea of avatar, I don't subscribe to it. But as an anthropologist, I look at it because Indians like many beginnings. And today, somebody told me yesterday or day before yesterday that the first Prime Minister was Subhash Chandra Bose. You heard this? I mean, I had not heard it. I am 70-year-old, but one's knowledge can be limited. I heard this suddenly, and I said, this is a typical Indian way of enmity. How does an Indian start enmity? Indian claims a new beginning. There is a story of by Premchand, whose Hindi mein hai. I hope you don't mind my using a little bit of Hindi. किसके बाप इस देश में किसके बाप ज्यादा रईस नहीं थे. एंड देन प्रेमचंद गोज ऑन टू से कि हमारे भी थे, लेकिन कुछ दिन के बाद मुझे पता चला कि हमारे पड़ोसी के बाप ज्यादा भी रईस बने हैं. We create beginning. We are a nation of beginning makers. We make many beginnings. Every village has an ancient beginning. Every village well has a Rama who come there and put an arrow there. It's amazing. We don't have a single beginning. Indian people, population stock is a mix. Religion is a mix. Language is a mix. We are the world's and history's greatest mixers and beginners. Indian civilization is a civilization of beginners, making many new beginnings every day. Every next day we go back to the past, and we don't call it nostalgia. We just call it parampara. Param is a superlative of para. Param is the other. You know, parachakra, paradharma, paradesh, paralok. Para means the other. Param is, in Sanskrit, you make a noun, comparative case and superlative case. So param is the superlative of para. That which is the otherest of the others is ours. Parampara. That is our obsession. So we lost the chance of getting a Tower of Babel, and we created these so many others beyond the othering. They are all our claim, but they must remain others. That is the condition. It's a paradox that we have swallowed hook. What is that? Hook, lines, whatever that. Lock, stock, barrel. We swallowed that paradox. That's Indian civilization. I mean, I laugh at it because I belong to it, because it is my own. I'm laughing at this paradox because I'm captive, I'm captured, I'm surrounded by that paradox. See, when people come to Bangalore, we are very proud of saying, very ancient. This part of is the oldest, but we are not talking about the history of it. We are talking about our pride of its being so old. We're talking about where we show it off. We don't show Bangalore to people. We show off our Bangalore to people. Please remember that I am not a grave digger in Shakespeare's play. So when I'm talking of language dies, culture dies, memory dies, I'm not a death specialist or not even an anesthetist. I'm just an observer. I'm an amused observer of things, and I'm sharing my amusement and amazement with you. Forgive me for that. Thank you. I don't want you to become para or parampara. Therefore, I must accept to stop. Thank you, Ravi. You've been very kind. Thank you.